It was one of those silent nights when time seems suspended in the air. Steph Curry was in his private office, surrounded by the familiar aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the soft glow of the lamp that always accompanied him on nights of reflection. What he didn't know was that in a few minutes, his life would change forever. Have you ever had that feeling that something is about to change? That inexplicable chill that runs down your spine moments before a discovery that redefines everything? Steph was organizing papers for the family foundation when his fingers stumbled upon a folder he had never seen before. The brown leather was worn by time, and something about that rough texture made him pause. It was as if that object carried secrets long buried. "What folder is this?" he murmured to himself, feeling a strange curiosity take hold of his thoughts. Upon opening it carefully, his eyes encountered documents that made his heart race. Birth certificates, old photographs, papers, yellowed by time. But what intrigued him most was seeing Isha's name in documents that dated from long before they had met. Documents that told a completely different story from the one she had always shared. The silence of the house weighed like 1,000 unspoken words. Each page that Steph turned revealed more pieces of a puzzle he didn't even know existed. How is it possible that someone you've loved for so many years still keeps such deep mysteries? One photograph in particular made his hands tremble. Isha, years younger, beside people he had never seen. But it wasn't just that which disturbed him. It was the expression on her face, a vulnerability he had never witnessed. It was like looking at a version of his wife who had existed in a world parallel to his. "Who are you really, Isha?" he whispered to the night wind, feeling that this question carried a weight greater than he imagined. In that moment, Steph realized that great revelations always come when we least expect them. There were documents from a city called Charlotte, where Isha had apparently lived for years. Records from a school she had never mentioned. References to people with a surname that wasn't hers. The sound of his own heartbeat echoed in his ears as he leafed through page after page. Each discovery was like a small explosion of reality readjusting itself. You can perceive that when we question everything we know about someone, it's as if the ground beneath our feet begins to shake. But then, something happened that no one expected. A paper fell from the folder, sliding gently to the floor. When Steph bent down to pick it up, he read something that made his entire world pause. Isha Johnson, Witness Protection Program, Case Archived. The air became dense, charged with a tension he had never experienced. It was impossible not to feel that everything he believed about his family life was about to collapse. The Witness Protection Program, his Isha, the mother of his children, the Babui woman who slept beside him every night. How does someone hide an entire lifetime of secrets? How many times in life do we discover that the people closest to us carry stories we never dreamed existed? Steph sat heavily in his chair, feeling the cold leather against his back. The office that had always been his refuge now seemed like a courtroom where he was simultaneously judge and defendant. The folder open before him was like a door to a universe he never imagined his family inhabited. Outside, he could hear Isha preparing something in the kitchen, her familiar footsteps echoing through the hallway. Those same steps that calmed him every night now carried the weight of unformulated questions. It was incredible how a simple discovery could transform comforting sounds into reminders of unresolved mysteries. He carefully stored the documents, feeling that each movement was charged with meaning. He knew he couldn't simply pretend nothing had happened. But he also knew he couldn't confront her without completely understanding what he had discovered. "Great discoveries always come when we least expect them," he murmured, repeating to himself a phrase that now gained deeply personal meaning. That night, when Isha came to say goodnight before sleeping, Steph observed her with completely new eyes. Every gesture, every word, every smile now carried an additional layer of meaning. It was as if he were seeing his wife through a filter that revealed shadows that had always been there, but which he had never noticed. "Is everything all right, love?" asked Isha, gently touching his shoulder. "Yes, just thinking about some work things," he replied, feeling the weight of the first conscious lie in years of marriage. But as she walked away, Steph knew he had crossed an invisible line. From that moment on, he wouldn't be able to rest until he discovered the whole truth about the woman he loved. And something told him that this journey would take him to places he never imagined existed in his own life. What Steph didn't know was that his search for answers would lead him to discover not only Isha's secrets, but also truths about himself that would forever change how he viewed his marriage, his family, and his place in the world. Great discoveries always come when we least expect them, and this discovery was just the beginning of a journey that would test the limits of love, trust, and forgiveness. But what happened in the following days would change everything forever. The first rays of morning sun found Steph awake for hours, with dark circles that told the story of a sleepless night. The coffee grew cold on his desk, while he discreetly typed on the computer, his online searches creating a web of information he never imagined needing about his own wife. Have you ever wondered how it's possible to live beside someone and still not know her completely? Charlotte, North Carolina. Witness Protection Program. Isha Johnson. The words echoed in his mind like a disturbing mantra. Each search revealed fragments of a life that existed before him, a parallel existence that his wife had chosen to bury. In that moment, Steph realized that the investigation he was conducting wasn't just about Isha. It was about both of them, about the foundation of their love, about the authenticity of everything they had built together. The familiar sound of Isha's footsteps coming down the stairs made his heart race. There was something different now in how he reacted to her presence. It was as if every interaction was filtered through this new lens of uncertainty that had installed itself in his mind. "Good morning, love. You got up early today," said Isha, kissing his forehead as she did every morning. "I had some things to resolve," replied Steph, quickly closing the computer screen. The lie left his lips with an ease that frightened him. During breakfast, Steph observed every movement of Isha with almost microscopic attention. The way she stirred her coffee, the way she smiled at the children, even how she held the phone when it rang. Everything now carried the weight of unformulated questions. But it was when the phone rang that something truly disturbing happened. Isha looked at the screen, and Steph managed to capture an expression he had never seen before. It was fear. Pure, instinctive, visceral fear. "It's nothing important," she said, quickly rejecting the call. But her hands trembled for a few seconds after, and Steph noticed. How does someone hide signs of such deep terror for so long? That afternoon, with Isha away from home for work commitments, Steph made a decision that would change everything. He called Marcus Williams, his childhood friend, who now worked as a private investigator. If he was going to discover the truth, he needed professional help. "Marcus, I need you to help me with something delicate," said Steph, feeling the weight of each word. "Sure, brother. What's happening?" "It's about Isha. I found some documents that suggest she may have been in the Witness Protection Program. I need to know the truth." The silence on the other side of the line was deafening. When Marcus finally spoke, His voice carried a seriousness that Steph had rarely heard. "Steph, that's dangerous territory. People in the program have very serious reasons for being there. Are you sure you want to open that box?" "I need to know who the mother of my children is, Marcus. I need to know who I'm married to." Great discoveries always require courage to face inconvenient truths, and Steph was about to discover exactly what that meant. 2 days later, Marcus called with information that made Steph's blood freeze in his veins. Isha Johnson had been a key witness in a case involving a criminal organization in Charlotte. She had testified against powerful, dangerous people. People who, according to Marcus, might still be looking for her. She didn't just change her name, Steph. She changed her entire life. New identity, new story, new family, everything. New family? Steph felt as if the ground was disappearing beneath his feet. She was married before, brother. She had a completely different life. The phone almost slipped from Steph's hands. It was impossible not to feel that everything he believed was crumbling word by word. Married before. An entire hidden life. False identity. How many times in life do we discover that our reality is just an edited version of the truth? But then Marcus said something that made all of Steph's blood freeze. "And Steph, there's a connection to your family that you need to know." The case she testified in involved money laundering through basketball academies. Academies that had connections to the NBA. Connections that may have reached you. Steph's world stopped. The room spun around him as if he were in an emotional hurricane. It wasn't just about Isha hiding her past. It was about her past being intertwined with his present, in ways he had never imagined. That night, when Isha came home, Steph was waiting for her in the living room, the documents carefully organized on the coffee table. The moment he had feared and anticipated had finally arrived. "Isha," he said, his voice carrying a weight that made her stop at the door. "We need to talk." She looked at the papers on the table, and Steph saw exactly the moment she understood. Her face lost all color, her eyes filled with a terror that confirmed all his suspicions. "How did you find this?" she whispered, her voice breaking like glass. "The question isn't how I found it," replied Steph, feeling tears burning his eyes. "The question is, why did you never tell me that our entire life is built on a lie?" Great discoveries always come with a price, and Steph was about to discover that the price of truth can be higher than any person is prepared to pay. No one could imagine that this moment would be the turning point that would redefine not just AVE, marriage, but 2 entire lives. The silence that settled in the room was so dense it seemed to have weight of its own. Isha remained motionless at the door, her hands trembling like leaves in the wind, while Steph awaited an explanation that could make sense of years of carefully constructed lies. "Steph, she began, but the words died in her throat. 10 years, Isha. 10 years of marriage. How many nights did you lie beside me knowing that I didn't know who you really were? Have you ever felt the exact moment when a life divides into before and after? That instant, when everything you thought you knew reveals itself as a carefully maintained illusion?" Isha approached slowly, each step carrying the weight of years of secrets. When she finally sat on the sofa, Steph could see silent tears streaming down her face. But they weren't tears of guilt. They were tears of relief. "You want to know the truth?" she said, her voice gaining a strength that Steph had never heard before. "The truth is that I was dying of fear every day. The truth is that every morning I woke up beside you, I wondered if it would be the day my past caught up with us. Then why didn't you tell me? Why build our life on lies? Isha closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, there was fierce determination in her gaze. It was as if she was finally allowing her true personality to emerge after years of hiding. Because I saw my first husband be murdered in front of me, Steph. Because I testified against people who kill entire families to protect their secrets. Because I knew that if they found me, it wouldn't just be me who would die. It would be our children too. The air left Steph's lungs as if he had been punched in the stomach. First husband. Murdered. The words echoed in his mind like an emergency siren he couldn't turn off. Michael Johnson was my real name before I became Isha Alexander, she continued, her voice now firm as steel. I worked as an accountant for what I thought was a legitimate investment company. I discovered they were laundering drug money through youth basketball academies. How is it possible that someone carries so much pain and still manages to smile every morning? When I confronted my boss about the irregularities, he laughed in my face, said I already knew too much to simply leave. That night, men invaded my house. My husband, David, tried to protect me. Her voice broke. They killed him in front of me and said I would be next if I didn't do exactly what they ordered. Steph felt as if he were watching a horror movie, except it was the life of the woman he loved. Each word she said rewrote their story together. So, you decided to testify against them, said Steph, beginning to understand the magnitude of his wife's courage. I had no choice. They would continue killing innocent people. The FBI offered me protection in exchange for my testimony. New identity, new life, new chance to start over. But then Isha said something that made Steph's world stop completely. And Steph, the reason we met wasn't a coincidence. The FBI placed me in San Francisco specifically because they knew you were starting your NBA career. They needed an identity that seemed natural, organic. What? The word came out as a desperate whisper. Our first meeting, that cafe where we bumped into each other, it was planned. The FBI thought an NBA player's girlfriend would be the perfect cover. No one would question my presence. In the right social circles. Great discoveries always destroy our most fundamental certainties, and Steph was seeing his love story being rewritten word by word. Steph's heart beat so hard he could feel it in his temples. Was everything a lie? Their love? The marriage? The children? But Steph, continued Isha, approaching him with desperate urgency, what started as a farce became the most real thing in my life. I fell in love with you for real. Every day, every moment, every "I love you" that I said was genuine. How can I believe anything you say now? Because I'm here telling you everything, she screamed, her composure finally breaking. Because I could have taken this secret to the grave, but I couldn't live any more lying to the man I love. It was impossible not to perceive that even in the greatest crisis of their lives, there was an authenticity in Isha's pain that Steph had never witnessed before. It was as if he was finally meeting his true wife. And there's one more thing you need to know, she said, her voice now a whisper loaded with fear. Yesterday I received a call. Someone discovered where I am. They know about you, about the children. The past has finally caught up with us. The phone she had rejected during breakfast. The fear in her eyes. Everything made sense now, and this sense was more terrifying than Steph had ever imagined. How many days do we have? He asked, surprising himself with his own calm. I don't know. Maybe days, maybe hours. In that moment, Steph realized that it didn't matter how their story had begun. What mattered was how it would end, and he had a choice to make. Run from Isha's past or stay and fight alongside her. So, what do we do now? Isha looked at him with a mixture of hope and terror that broke his heart in half. Now, you decide if you still want to be my husband, knowing everything. Great discoveries always force us to choose between who we were and who we can become. And Steph was at the exact moment when this choice would define the rest of their lives. And it was then that the truth finally came to light in a way no one could have predicted. Steph remained silent for long minutes, his eyes fixed on Isha's intertwined hands. He could hear the tick-tock of the clock on the wall, each second marking the passage of time while he processed a decade of lies and a lifetime of truths. Have you ever had to choose between the safety of what you know and love for the unknown? Between justified anger and impossible forgiveness? When he finally spoke, his voice carried a serenity that surprised them both. Isha, you saved my life in a way I'll never be able to repay. How so? She whispered, confused by the unexpected response. Because you showed me that real love isn't about knowing every detail about someone, it's about choosing that person every day, even when we discover things that change everything. It was impossible not to perceive that in that moment, Steph wasn't just forgiving his wife. He was discovering himself as a man, as a husband, as a human being capable of loving beyond his own limitations. He got up and walked to the window, observing the city lights that blinked like earthly stars. You know what hurts me most in this whole story? It's not that you lied to me. It's that you carried this weight alone for all these years. Steph. No, let me finish, he said, turning to face her. You testified against murderers to protect innocent people, lost your first husband, were forced to abandon your entire identity. And even so, even carrying all this pain, you managed to give me the best years of my life. The tears streaming down Isha's face were now different. They weren't tears of fear or guilt, but of deep relief, as if a weight she had carried for a decade was finally being shared. How is it possible that the most painful moment of a relationship also transforms into the most liberating? But what about now? She asked. These people, they're going to come after us. After you, the children. Steph sat beside her, taking her hands in his for the first time since discovering the documents. Then, we face it together, as it always should have been. You don't understand, Steph. These people don't play around. They kill entire families. And you don't understand, Isha. I'm Steph Curry. I have resources, connections, private security. I'm not the same naive man you met 10 years ago. In that moment, something changed, in the energy of the room. It was as if the victim and protector were redefining their roles, as if the strength of one was amplifying the strength of the other. Great discoveries always teach us that we are stronger together than we ever imagined being apart. Steph picked up the phone and dialed a number. Marcus, it's me. I need your entire team. We have a situation. No, it's not about investigation. It's about protection for my entire family. While Steph organized security, Isha watched, with a mixture of admiration and terror. It was as if she were seeing a version of her husband being born that she had never known, determined, strategic, fierce in protecting those he loved. And there's one more thing we need to do, said Steph, after hanging up the phone. We're going to tell the children. Not all the details, but they deserve to know that Mommy is a hero who saved many lives. Steph, they're too young to understand that their mother is the bravest woman I've ever met? They're never too young for that. How many times in life do we discover that our heroes were right beside us all along? That night, after a careful conversation with the children, adapted for their ages, but honest about Isha's courage, the family gathered in the living room. There were discreet security guards positioned around the house, but inside there was something that hadn't existed for days. Peace. "You know what's funny?" said Steph, embracing Isha while they watched the children play. "Our first meeting may have been planned, but this here, this family, this love, this life we built, this is more real than anything I've ever known. Even knowing that I started everything lying? Especially knowing that. Because it shows me how much you had to love me to finally be able to tell the truth. It was impossible not to perceive that what had begun as the biggest crisis of their marriage had transformed into the greatest proof of love that Steph had ever experienced." A few weeks later, with the help of the FBI and Steph's security team, the last members of the criminal organization were arrested. The past that had haunted Isha for more than a decade was finally dead and buried. But the deepest transformation wasn't in the external situation. It was in the connection between Steph and Isha. They had gone through fire and emerged as purified gold. They knew each other in a way that few couples ever experience. "Great discoveries always come when we least expect them," said Steph one night, repeating the phrase that had become their mantra. "But the greatest discoveries are about ourselves." "And what did you discover about yourself?" asked Isha, nestling in his arms. "That I'm capable of a love greater than I ever imagined. That I can choose trust even when evidence suggests distrust. That I can be the man you always saw in me, even when I couldn't see it." In that moment, with his family safe and his wife finally free from the past that haunted her, Steph understood a fundamental truth. It doesn't matter how a love story begins. What matters is how it chooses to continue, day after day, choice after choice, forgiveness after forgiveness. The past had tried to destroy their present, but instead, it had strengthened their future in a way that nothing else could have done. Great discoveries always come when we least expect them, but the greatest discoveries are always about our own capacity to love beyond our limitations, to forgive beyond our understanding, and to choose hope even when everything seems lost. And in the silence of that night, while observing his family sleep in safety, Steph smiled, knowing that he had discovered not only who Isha really was, but who he himself could become, when true love was tested by the fire of the most absolute truth.